Oh, g'day everyone, it is Woody here, usually on the couch with Woody, but we're not on the couch today. We're actually in the backyard at Paddington at a little pad that Dan Davidson has commissioned for his tour.
Just for this interview.
It's
It's all for you.
Mate, welcome.
Good to
welcome
see you, man.
On the couch or in the backyard with Woody.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good mate. This is, I'll say it straight off, this is our first international guest that we've had on the couch with me, and thank you for being so gracious of your time and in a busy schedule, which it always is when you tour.
My pleasure,
for spending some time with us, mate.
Well, I just wrapped up most of my press and my meetings, and I had the worst day ever today. I returned one rental car, tried to get another one, left the Airbnb car keys in the rental return.
It's a comedy of errors.
I almost put gas in the diesel car. It was a nightmare this morning, so I'm glad to see you hanging out in the backyard.
That's
having a
right,
beer.
just relaxing. Mate, fantastic. Well, I always like to get straight into it and find out from the first part of the interview exactly where music began for you. And I know your story a little bit from seeing your show at the Beer Shed where you were originally a rock artist, very similar to my story, and country got you and you've been holding on ever since. But where did you know from, what was your lineage of music? Is there music in the family? Or were you at in primary school? Where did it all begin for you, mate?
Yeah, well, I think I got into music from my dad playing me songs at night. Like, he'd always, before bed, he would play me whatever he knew, which was a limited amount of songs, but he was just one of those guys that's kind of good at everything.
Yeah.
So he would play me the Beatles and the Eagles and like Queen, and he'd play me Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash and just a couple of Canadian bands too. Like Blue Rodeo is a band that we had up there that he loved. So I kind of started thinking guitar was cool from that.
Yep.
And then from there, I started playing in little bands, terrible bands, like punk rock bands and stuff as a kid in junior high and high school. And then from there, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself in my life. So I knew I liked playing guitar, and so I applied for this music school in Edmonton, where I live. And it's actually one of the better music schools in Canada. And I got in by accident, and I started trying to get more professional and learning how to, about theory and ear training and how to play with people and kind of what I wanted out of music.
Yeah.
And I met some guys there that I still play with today, but we started a rock band early on because that's all I knew at the time, and music back then appealed to me in more of like a visceral emotional state where, I wanted to have that aggressive sort of output in my life because I was a young guy. Yeah. But that band took off really quickly. It was, before I knew it, we were opening for bands like Bon Jovi and playing stadiums and stuff like that. It was weird. So I was like,
all original content.
Yeah. I was like a 21-year-old kid, and we're on tour playing with Bon Jovi. So it was a weird ride. But and we were coming up in the time in the industry where the industry was at its absolute worst. It was like 2006 or something like that. Yeah. 2008. And so we'd have all these labels flying out from New York and LA to see us play in our hometown, where we didn't live in a big town, but we're selling 1,000 tickets at shows.
Wow.
And but everyone kept getting fired. Like, we'd have our manager there, and I'd say, like, oh, what did the guy from Interscope Records think? Like, well, he loved it, but he got fired today. So happened 3 or 4 times, and it got to the point where I just decided I was going to take it upon myself to figure out what those guys do and how I can compete on an indie shoestring budget. Yeah. So we did that for a long time, and we had a lot of great successes.
What was that band called?
It's called Tupelo Honey.
Tupelo Honey. Yep.
Yeah. So we had top songs on Much Music, which is like MTV, and lots of top radio hits, and
do you have country fans that recognize you from those days?
Oh, totally. Yeah, in Canada for sure. People, a lot of radio people actually were like, "Oh my God, you were that band!" And it always is a nice ego boost for me because at the time we had just had our heads down and we were focused. So I didn't know that the band had any cultural needle moving. But yeah, it was great. The best thing that came out of it was I learned how to do all that. So when I started my country career, I didn't have to make all the same mistakes that I made in my younger days, and I knew what to do, and I knew how to move quickly.
For you as an artist now, like, what was the defining moment that turned you into the country vein? Like, was it more of I always say, as a 44-year-old man, I can get old in this industry and not feel awkward on stage trying to be a rock star. I still put elements of rock into my music, but it just feels like it's all about relationships, connections, and growth, and all about the song and the story. That's what I love about it. It's almost like a philosophy more than even the style, being a country artist. How do you view yourself as an artist, and how did that come into? I've listened to a lot of your music over the last week, but where did it sort of turn and you go, okay, this is where I want to be for the next 20,
Yeah.
30 years.
Oh, I think you nailed it for kind of how I feel about it too. Is it's like in this genre, it's more about personal connections. You know, it's like people want to find that connection with the artists, and what I find is like in rock, like the audience is typically about 20 to 30, and tastes change very quickly.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to be cool next. But
Yeah,
in
that's
country,
right.
the audience seems to be like 13 to 90, and they're
That's
loyal.
right.
And they just want to meet you, and I'm at that phase of my life where that's what I like most about doing this is
So I do as well.
getting to meet
Oh,
people
it's the best.
and trying to provide that soundtrack to people's lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I knew that it was the right thing to do after I started writing for my solo project, and just stopped thinking. Just started writing and opened that door that I kept locked in my writing. You know, the twangy door. Growing up in the Canadian prairies, where it's nothing
Yeah,
but
yeah.
fields and farms and ranches.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very like cliche
Yeah.
country when you think about what country is,
Yeah, yeah.
minus the snowy winters.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of came out the way it did, and I don't feel like I'm doing that much different than I
No.
did in my rock and roll days.
Yeah.
But it's just hitting a different way, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so yeah, I think you're right when you can age gracefully in country music
Yeah,
without
yeah.
having to feel like you're doing some weird tap dance for people.
Trying to be the next Blink 182.
Yeah, exactly.
Hang on, dude. You're a dad.
Yeah, I know.
And, sorry, you've got. So let's go on family because that's a good segue.
Sure.
You tell us about your family. You got a wife and a couple of kids.
Yeah. So I've been with my wife since like the beginning of my music career. I was
Right.
19 years old when we started dating, so it's so crazy, you know, all these years later. But we have two little girls that are 10 and 8, and they're kind of into music, and it's always funny, you know, when I look at my music videos and I look at my studio, it's like, girls have probably a lot of questions of what their dad does for a living. I got a music video where I'm dressed like a moose, and it's like I'm in China dressed like Elton John meets John Wayne, and it's a completely strange life.
Now you say it, I do find that quite hilarious as well because my boys have got to see some really good shows that I've done in Australia, and I had my boy on stage announcing my song "Get Your Boots On," and I look back at that photo every couple of days to remind me of how special that was for his dad.
Yeah.
But I don't think he has any idea that that's like that's actually so I put a guitar and I just sing and I play and then this music comes out and then people clap and then you
That's
get
the
off.
job. That's
the
it.
job.
You punch the clock and you go home.
That's
Yeah.
right. And they don't see all the other work. But yeah, it's an interesting, when you say it like that, I think it's wonderful that we can have those strong partners in our life that support us wholly and solely because you can't do it without that strong family network. And
yeah.
I wouldn't not like to take on, especially an indie artist as I am, I wouldn't like to take it on with not having my foundation of my wife and my kids.
Oh, totally. And I always think about that too. In music, you can very easily creep into this, like, you know, you see somebody else succeeding, and like, you know, the other day I was at the Morgan Evans doc thing, and it's like, oh man, he's playing the Opera House, and we're kind of about the same age. Like, oh, why not me? You get those
Yeah.
why not me feelings.
Yeah.
But then you think about it, like, what all the good things that are happening to support what your efforts are, and you know, I'm really happy with all the experiences I've had. I'm really lucky to have whatever, you know, career milestones I've had, but I'm also really lucky to have had the experiences with my family and the time I've had with my
100%.
kids and our path. You know, there's people out there that have a lot harder time. No matter what your success level is, there's always ways to be thankful for it.
So when we got into Australia this year, we've done the Beer Shed, which was exceptional. And just for the listeners and the viewers, when you go to a Dan Davidson concert, be prepared to laugh as much as you fall in love with his music because you reminded me a lot of, and this is a massive compliment, but very much like Jason Mraz approach.
Oh yeah.
The way you deliver your banter between songs and you connect. Now, Jason Mraz was at a venue in Cronulla that we have. It's only a 100 cap room. It's a little, like a basement, like a jazz bar. But I was in there one day with 30 people in there and everyone was laughing, and I walked down and had a few sherbets and I'm going, who's this guy? And then I was just giggling at everything that came out of his mouth. And then the guy sang and I went, okay, I'm sitting down, like, you know. But that's something that I think is learnt, not just also born with. Was that something you studied? Because I spoke to Jason at the end of that concert and he said, yeah, man. He said, I studied like a degree in musical theatre.
Oh.
And he learned his chops from that kind of approach. How did you do, because this is really important for the young artists out there watching, how did you develop your stage chops? Like, I know you're naturally charismatic, but is there things that you've gone, okay, this is what I need to do? Or, I mean, I looked at your set list and you've got your little reminder pointers, which I said to Matt on the way in here. That's what I do as well.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah, like, I think, like, it is It is hard, and when the more you think about it, the more you're going to screw up, you know,
Right.
and the more the jokes aren't going to land,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
bits
yeah.
aren't going to be
Yeah.
engaging and stuff like that. So I always find that like I do a lot of visualizing now. I'll think about it all, but if I start writing too many notes on my set list, it sucks.
Yeah.
So usually, if, you know, I have a couple key moments that I like to make sure I hit as like stage markers.
Yep.
And I kind of got to watch for that, depending on where you're playing, because I don't want to tell the same stories in every market, every show.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I have my things that I know work and I know land with the audience and that I know will grab some attention. So the next time I try something new, it'll be sticky.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's just trial and error, I think,
Yeah.
for the most part. Like when we were in the rock band, for the first half of the band, I wasn't even the singer. I was just playing guitar.
Right.
And then when I took over, it was terrifying.
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
not only had I never sang before, but I'd never been in the center of the stage speaking to
Wow.
people.
Wow.
So getting into this, I found that the more that I have, if I'm by myself, I always find it harder. But if I have one or two guys with me that
To lean on.
just kind of, you know, I feel like I got a bit of a squad, and it's like it's a little less scary, and I can be silly, and at least they'll laugh, and
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So yeah, it's. I don't really know. It's a good question. I've never
Yeah,
really
just-
thought about it before, but I think it's just trial and error, and I think the more comfortable you are on stage, the more you learn to just like.
And the audience becomes at ease. And
Yeah.
there's a truth. I remember years ago when I was a kid reading, most audiences, I can say most because not all, some people like to set you up, but most audiences want you to be succeeding and want you to make them feel
Yeah,
good.
they want to have fun.
They want to have fun. Like,
Totally.
they don't want to see you train wreck, or, you know, we've all been there and we've seen an artist go on when you feel for them, like, you just go like,
Oh yeah,
that is the
Like,
worst
that
feeling.
did not land.
That did not, yeah.
Like, you know what I was thinking the other day that kind of made me have a good mindset for this kind of thing is, it's like I know that I'm not like Luke Combs, and I know that I'm not like, you know, Morgan Wallen or whatever. I know that I don't do what they do, and that's okay. Like I started to realize that having personality is probably one of the strong suits I have.
100%.
And so
Yeah.
I'm just like, you know, just lean into that.
Yeah,
just
lean
like
into it.
do my thing, and if people hate it, then at least it's honest.
Well, there's a guy who did my first song called Bondi Smile back in 2011 when I signed the Country Chick. But his name's Duncan Toombs, and he says to me every time I see him, because we all have these insecurities as artists, and I said to him, like, what do you do? What do you do, Duncan? Like, you know, because you're so cool, you're so talented, you always say that. He goes, mate, I just be me. He goes, you just be you, Woody. We love you. You just be you. And I thought, I took that for the last 10, 15 years, and I thought, what you said is 100% right. No one has a DNA like you, and it's okay to show your warts and all, because that actually is going to help someone, or it's going to impact somebody more than if you try and put on a facade and go, I'm Bon Jovi today, or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Well, you know what I find too is that most people in country are trying to be Morgan Wallen.
Yeah, right,
And
there
they're
you
trying to
go.
be Luke Combs, and it's
Yeah.
like those people. If I'm in the scenario where I'm on a festival, there's a bunch of people in my lane that are doing that. I'm going to look like so much different and so
Yeah,
much
of
more
course.
refreshing if I
Yeah.
just do my thing.
That's good, yeah. Yep. Well, that's what I do with my sound as well. Mine's crossover country, and I lean on, I call it country funk, kunk.
Kunk.
Gotta be
Sounds like a dirty word.
Carefully you say that one.
Can't say that in Canada.
You're not in Kansas now, boy. All right, cool. Is there any times in your life where you've been at your lowest and you've gone, this is the out that I had? Was music the rescuer that it is for most of us, or was it something more practical you can share with my viewers?
Yeah, I think like the lowest I'd probably felt was, there was two moments. One was I was 25 and my wife had finished school and she was living in another city. She wasn't my wife yet. And she was doing her practicum, and like my band had just fallen apart, and I was like living with my parents at home. I just like didn't know what to do. I wasn't in school. My wife lived away, and I thought, you know, I was like, oh, I can't. She won't put up with this for much longer.
Yeah.
And you start kind of
Second
looking
guessing.
inward a lot and realizing like, okay, there's some work to be done here, and that can be pretty defeating. But you know, my dad's just got this way of simplifying things and be like, well, I guess you just better get back to work. Like the way whatever he said, the way he'll phrase it is just like, you're right.
That's the
Like
answer.
there's zero benefit feeling sorry for yourself in this moment, and just work and put your head down and do the things you want to do and be great and don't go away was his big one-liner that I keep with me every day.
Be great and don't go away.
Yeah, so that was one time, and the other time was after. Yeah, it was probably around that same time actually. I had my band had ramped down, and I was like finding myself in this job that I hated, and I wasn't doing music enough, and Yeah, after having a lot of conversations with my dad and my soon-to-be wife, and just realized, okay, let's make some big life changes here. And went back to school. I got a business degree, and my wife and I found a place that we could afford, and we started that going on, and finished my business degree. And just realized that music was something that I wasn't done with yet, and it was just one of the lucky ones where lightning strikes twice.
Yeah.
And so something happened, and it got going, and I started making money doing the thing that I actually love to do, and then you look up and I got two beautiful little girls, and my wife's career is blossoming, and we're in a good stage in life now. But yeah, I think that was probably the hardest year for me, being 25.
Yeah. I agree. My 20s were hard, 30s are hard as well, but 40s is so much easier because throw it at me.
Yeah, well,
throw it at me like there's nothing I haven't seen.
That's what I think too. I was dreading turning 40, and then I talked to a lot of my friends that are in their 40s, and they're like, "This is the best decade. But you know who you are, and you know what you want, and you can handle anything."
Awesome, mate. Well, that's very positive. Now, what about two things? One is festivals in Canada. I want to sort of know how that sort of navigates in your world. So tell me about like the Canadian. So I also wanted to say that a beautiful moment in your set list was when you referred to your life at the moment and saying, "I feel so blessed and grateful to be traveling the world through music." And that's a dream that a lot of musicians and a lot of general music lovers have.
Totally.
For you to be in your 40th year or 39th or what, you're 40 now?
Yeah.
Just turned 40?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and finally achieve that, mate. That's an amazing feeling, and I really hope that it just keeps getting bigger and better for you. But what was that transition from being the guy in the pubs and the clubs and whatever you're doing to make money to now doing festivals and things in Canada? And what does it feel like when you do the Canadian festivals?
Oh, it's so awesome. Like it's nice to do festivals at home, and starting to see people, like over the last few years, just being there to sing the songs with me.
Recognize your songs.
Yeah, it's so great because it's such a big country. Like, and to go to the other side of the country, it's no different than going Perth to Sydney or Perth to Brisbane or something. So when there's that many people across that wide of a distance that are singing along, that's the first thing I think about when loving Canadian festivals. But and the thing I really love about festivals in Canada is that they're so different. Like it's I saw an Australian front row at our Calgary Stampede show. Calgary Stampede is the biggest rodeo in the world, and it's mayhem. They have one stage there called the Nashville North Stage, and it's like 5,000 of the most intoxicated 23-year-olds you've ever seen in your entire life. And it's like the people are so great. You could read a cookbook off stage and they'd be losing their marbles.
Yeah, we love you.
So that one's awesome. I saw an Australian front row, one of the radio guys that came over to experience the Calgary Stampede, and I was like, this is so cool that he gets to see like our cowboy culture like in front row in real life. And so that one's great. But we have big festivals all across, like Ontario, where the province where Toronto is one called Boots and Hearts. Which is a 3-day festival that they'll get Morgan Wallen and Luke Combs and Luke Bryan and Chris Stapleton and Nickelback will play sometimes.
Wow, that's the best.
There's all kinds, but we have a lot of really small ones too that I love. It's almost my favorite. It's the little rodeos in the middle of nowhere in a town you probably never heard of, but it's the only thing that's happening for the next 300 kilometers. So like there'll be 10,000 people there. And
that's unreal.
And they're
kind of like movie moments for me, visualizing when you see. Like, the way they depict like a spring fair or whatnot. Yeah. Is that what it's like? Is that what
totally.
It feels like?
And there's some small towns I've never even heard of that will still get booked at. Like I booked at something called the Palmer Rapids Festival. I've never been to Palmer Rapids. I don't even know what that is. But show up there and it's just a little town and like almost off cell service. And it'd be 1,000 people, 2,000 people there. And it's just those small ones almost are better for me because those people are just dying to be there, and you're right there with them, and you're meeting everybody after.
The hugs and the kisses.
And it's so special for them because they don't get that all the time.
That's right. I love that. That's seriously the brand that. Just a shout out to Matty Favell, who's in the background. He does all of our production for these videos. But we talk about it constantly as we're older musicians. What's our role? And we talk about our purpose as just taking people away for an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Totally.
Just give them that escape. And that's a healthy thing for humans and that interaction between audience and musicians up there plugging the amp in and just going, oh my God, we're we're literally creating this. That's a pretty powerful feeling.
Totally, and I think it's like, for me, if they leave going like, I want to be friends with that guy, it seems fun. That's that's the ultimate thing.
You've won that. That's the ultimate compliment. Okay, just before we wrap up and just talk about your socials and all that sort of stuff, let's talk about the coolest thing you said to me at your show was that you played through Bryan Adams and that he did Run to You on. Tell us about that experience and where that is, because I don't know, because obviously I do the Australian Bryan Adams show as well as a bit of
that's
fun on
right.
the side.
Yeah.
The husky voice.
I like that.
But yeah, tell me about that experience. Right?
So Bryan Adams has a studio in Vancouver called The Warehouse, and it's an unbelievable studio. And like bands like Muse will come over from England and record there, and like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's just like one of those places where it's top notch, one of the best in the world. And I was out there recording a live song for this Sirius XM competition I was in, and they're pulling out amps out of the closet, and I was plugging one in to do like a little solo or something, and I hear just some guy in the background, yeah, that's the Bryan Adams Run to You amp. And I'm like, who said that? It goes to Bryan Adams.
Yeah, that's right.
But sometimes, and he'll be there sometimes. So I didn't get to see him, but apparently he was in the next day and he saw my drummer. So
that'd be like, that's surreal, because that music and generation of that MTV era. I mean, like, he was the unsung hero. He was never in the kind of world of like Bon Jovi where he was plastered everywhere. But he chipped away, and wrote songs for many years before he even became an artist, didn't he? Like,
he's like such a part of the Canadian music, IQ. He's just in there. But Canada's a funny place. You wouldn't expect it to have so much classical places like that. But there's a thing in Calgary we have called the National Music Center, and they own like the piano that Elton John wrote Rocket Man on. It's just sitting out there. You can go see it, and like some of their studios they have there, it's. They'll have the console that Metallica recorded the Black Album on is there, and
that's
it's just
insane.
like, it's wild. And I've worked on these things in writers' camps and different retreats and things like that. It's like, it's eerie. They have all Burton Cummings guitar collection there, and it's just like, I just don't want to touch anything. I just want to be in the same room for a couple minutes and then leave.
Rub off on me, off on me, you magic. Oh, man, that's awesome. It's been absolutely a pleasure to hang out with you, mate, for a little while, and good luck with the rest of the tour. Can you just let everyone know about how to reach you and find your music, and what's your latest single at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. So Won't Forget is the new single,
Yep.
and it's featuring a Canadian friend of mine, Tim Hicks, who's done some good work down in Australia.
Yep.
And also Max Jackson, who's kind of a rising star, Toyota star maker.
100%, yeah.
And she's great. So it's out now, and you can find all the information on all my socials at It's Dan Davidson.
Yeah, that's right. It's Dan Davidson, yeah.
DanDavidsonmusic.com. And yeah, I like hearing from people, especially Aussies. I like making new friends.
Yeah, mate. Well, you got a buddy here, man. We'll be friends for a long
Cheers,
while.
man. Thanks for everything and coming to hang in the backyard today.
Yeah, awesome. See you guys.